One of the primary functions of the reproductive system is to make gametes and then to subsequently deliver those gametes, and then in the female to help nurture the embryo along its way toward birth. But the production of gametes is called gametogenesis. Sperm are the small and motile gamete. Eggs are larger and they have more nutrition that they provide to the zygote, but both are gametes. And their production has some obvious differences that we'll talk about, but some obvious similarities. Spermatogenesis, or the production of sperm, happens continuously once a male hits puberty. And a male produces millions of sperm a day. They only take about 7 weeks to develop, and they're just sort of continuously being put out. Oogenesis is what we call the development of eggs, and this is a long process. It begins, again, when females are 5 or 6 months old as a fetus, right? They're not even born yet, and does not finish until fertilization. In addition to continuous production, spermatogenesis also occurs longer into adulthood. So women will have a point where menstruation stops, right? Men can have that too, where they stop producing sperm, but it usually happens at a very old age. But the biggest difference between gametogenesis and oogenesis, aside from timing, is that when you start with a primary spermatocyte, which will undergo meiosis to make sperm, it will make 4 sperm. So you start with 1, you undergo 2 rounds of division, from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, you end up with 4 sperm that are all functional probably. With eggs, you start off with 1 primary oocyte, and you still go through those 2 rounds of division, but at the end, 3 of those are not functional eggs. Only 1 of them is a functional egg from that primary oocyte. So we start off with a spermatogonium, which is the germ cell, the stem cell. It will undergo mitosis and make 2 offspring. One of the offspring will stick around and remain a spermatogonium. The other one will become a primary spermatocyte. And that primary spermatocyte will undergo 2 rounds of meiosis, which you should be familiar with from last semester. After meiosis 1, you have 2 cells. Those are called secondary spermatocytes. Secondary spermatocytes undergo meiosis 2, and they produce 4 spermatids, which need to mature, get their tails and their acrosomes, and there we go. From 1 primary spermatocyte, we get 4 functional sperm, and this all happens in the tissue of the seminiferous tubules in the testes. Oogenesis occurs in the ovary, and you start with an oogonium, which, like a spermatogonium, is a stem cell, and it will undergo mitosis and make 2 identical daughter cells, as you do in mitosis. One will remain an oogonium, the other one will be a primary oocyte. And just like a primary spermatocyte, that primary oocyte will undergo meiosis. And that first round of meiosis does not produce 2 cells with equivalent amounts of cytoplasm. You produce 1 cell that's essentially just junk DNA that you get rid of. That's called a polar body. And the other cell is a secondary oocyte. Secondary oocyte, like a secondary spermatocyte, will undergo meiosis 2, and it will produce another polar body. And you end up with only, instead of 4 cells that are functional like in sperm, you get 1 functional egg. Now, you produce a primary oocyte when you're a fetus. Then you stop in that stage. You finish meiosis 1 and produce a secondary oocyte during your monthly cycle. You don't finish meiosis 2 until there's actual fertilization. So until the sperm fertilizes the egg, you don't get rid of the second polar body. Note that this has all been happening within a supportive follicle full of cells that are supporting the oocyte. And the follicle is what produces the estrogen. So as it grows during the monthly cycle, it produces more and more estrogen. Then what's left behind of the follicle after ovulation becomes the corpus luteum, which produces progesterone, which maintains the endometrial lining. And then it will break down, and your endometrial lining will be sloughed off if there is no fertilization. If there is, HCG is a hormone that will be produced by the embryo that will keep this around a little longer. After that, in humans, we separate things into first, second, and third trimester, but we'll talk about development next.